The money is out on the streets. It is not in the office. When I'm in the office and I'm building these decks, that's taken away from my time to go out, set up a meeting with them to become a future client. If I'm spending all my time building these decks, I'm losing out on money for myself and getting new clients and having new business and making just my goals for each month and each quarter.
Welcome to The Selling Edge, where we explore the tools, strategies, and stories that help sellers win faster and smarter. I'm Dan Prudhomme, Director of Partner Success with Futuri Media. Today, I'm joined by Mike McEvilly, who brings a unique perspective. Moving from medical sales to media sales, he's seen firsthand how focusing on your strengths while delegating the rest can transform performance. In our conversation, Mike shares the pitfalls of over-investing time in pitch decks, the mindset shift required to break out of comfort zones, and how tools like TopLine are helping him maximize time with clients and close bigger deals faster. Mike, thanks for joining us today. So tell me a little bit about your background in sales and kind of your own personal style of approach. That would be great.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my name is Mike, and I'm with KSTU, which is Fox 13 here in Utah. I've been in this role for a few years. My background, a little bit about me, I would say, is that I've been in the sale industry a little over 8 to 9 years. So I've been doing different types of sales for a while. I've come from a background of medical sales where it's very depth into the medical industry, all the way over to media sales, which is a completely different industry, but sales itself is very similar, just depending on the type of customer that you're looking at talking with.
And I think that point, especially when you look at, B2B in just the level of detail and just follow up and sequence, to your point, there's fundamentals that exist for both. And when it comes to medical sales, with decision makers, you're still going to be prepared, just like you need to be prepared for other decision makers. So, and I think a lot of what we'll look at today when we kind of talk about really maxing time, more time selling, less time building decks, how that helps, especially those experiences from working with different industries, which I can relate to because I've worked with different industries as well. And the fundamentals from a decision maker standpoint, it really comes down to that rapport, what you're bringing, how you're really helping them solve their pain points, and really showcasing it and telling that story. And that's ultimately what we want to do. And there's a lot of impact with that. So I appreciate you sharing that information as well. When we look at today's topic of really looking at spending more time selling, less time building decks, do what you do best and leave the rest, the first thing that really comes to mind is when you hear about pitch decks, the term pitch decks, and that they can really make or break a deal. What's your gut reaction when you hear that term?
My gut reaction on that is really frustration, long hours, as well as the first impression with talking with a client. And whenever building a deck or taking so much time on it, it's really going to be that first impression, because that is going to be the deal breaker. If this is of interest to that person, if I did it wrong, but I spent too much time on maybe the wrong part of the deck on building this out, it really is a deal breaker. So that first impression is going to be the biggest thing. And I think that for me is very stressful, and it can really lagger on for a while for me, just because I could be stressing out this entire time over just creating one simple thing that, someone else can be doing that for me this entire time.
Or even to that point, just that anxiety it brings up from with like medical and media sales and all the details to help with the decision maker, getting all that done while you're juggling all those different things. And I think that point you brought up really hammered that home. So with that in mind, what's the real problem with how most people approach pitch decks today?
I would say that we're focusing too much on probably one item on a deck. We're not balancing everything out where it should be evenly distributed, but we might be focusing on the wrong part of that deck that needs to go out to the client. And when we're focusing on one thing more than the other, it might be the wrong thing that the client is really looking for in detail. Whether it be data, whether it be just the creativity of a pitch deck, I think it all needs to be balanced out. And I think that's where a lot of people are struggling at, where one thing might be taking up way more time than it should be.
Do you think that one thing is consistent, or do you think it's just like comfort zone, or just what things should be covered when it comes to one particular topic and that's the default? Or does it just kind of vary from what you've said, depending on the situation, the opportunity?
I honestly think it can be a little bit of everything. And it's really going to be depending on that client as well. I want to say, if you're pitching something way bigger than maybe another client, you might be more focused on one thing that the client really had said than another client might have said, just build me something within this range. I'll be happy with it. I like what you're talking about, but give me more information. Where there's maybe a higher client, a profile that they really want specific details, and you focus way too much time on those specific details and forget about everything else within that deck.
Understood. So when we dig into, that role conflict a little bit more, why do you think so many high-performing people get pulled into doing things they aren't great at? And it can even segue a little bit to that point you brought about just getting in that one particular area and not kind of moving on to other things, like designing slides instead of, selling or leading or even telling that story.
I think on that is that we get too comfortable with one particular part of building a deck. And that might be for some people, the creativity. They have a lot of creativity and fun building it. And they forget a little bit about, I need to actually pitch this. Maybe I should review what I'm creating to make sure that I'm getting the main points to the client on what they're looking for from me. So I think that we just are in a state of really comfortability in one area, and we're not balancing it enough between everything.
Would you say that is a process issue, a people issue, or a mindset issue?
Man, I want to say that that's probably going to be a mindset issue. We're comfortable where we are. We know what we need to do, but sometimes we don't like to get out of that comfort zone. And when we don't want to get out of that comfort zone, we focus on one thing more than the other, and we forget about some of these other parts of these pitch decks that are going out to these clients.
From your point a few minutes ago, do you feel that anxiety leads to that fear of kind of getting out of that comfort zone and trying that approach you were talking about, which impacts the mindset, right?
Yes, 100%. That anxiety, when we're in our comfort zone, if we are told and we need to leave that comfort zone, that's 100% when anxiety starts coming in. And then that's where we're struggling a little bit, then we're stressing out, we're getting more anxiety. And then we kind of determine of, I might not feel comfortable with this. I need to go back to that comfort zone. And that's where we're focusing too much. We left a little bit, but now we came back to that comfort zone. And I think we need to push out of those boundaries where we balance everything out enough that we feel comfortable with everything.
And sometimes comfort just comes from doing, right? And just starting. And that is a mindset in itself, because the more you kind of get into that mode, it could take a whole nother approach than it's intended. So that's a really good point. When we talk about solutions and delegation, what would you say when it comes to getting help with deck creation? What tools or strategies or different things do you kind of recommend just to get assistance?
When anyone is new into an industry, I think it's great to talk to your managers, talk to your coworkers that have been there a while, because when you're starting up, it definitely takes a long time to create a deck, a proposal for someone. If you were brand new to this, you don't know everything that might need to be in there, stuff that is in there that doesn't need to be in there. And I think it's a great opportunity to reach out to our managers about what sources that we do have and what we're able to use, such as, data sources. You have AdMall, you have TopLine. I think they're great ways to gather data, but you don't have to focus so much on them. When you're requesting stuff from either of those, it helps out where you're able to focus your mindset on something else while you rely on these other options to bring forth those datas. And then as well as, talking with your coworkers, what kind of decks have they already built? Maybe I just need to tailor it a little bit more towards the client that I'm pitching, but I like what they already have. But I have other resources to gather that data that I can change out in that deck that's already created. So it makes it a lot easier for myself to not start from scratch and spend way too much time and just having the creativity of this deck to be pitched.
And that's a great point. Just being able to understand what you have available, how to utilize it, and then let that take impact. That does allow you more time in front of decision makers, so you can set appointments, you can close deals, and you can do what you love what you can find fun, and what really impacts helping those accounts. And that's a big part. So that's great. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah. And it's really, if you just break it down that way, and I always try to think of it that way, that really helps when it comes to overall impact. When you hear the phrase, spend more time selling, less time building decks, what does that mean to you personally, just given some of the points we've already talked about today?
One of my coworkers, he says all the time that the money is out on the streets. It is not in the office. Meaning that when I'm in the office and I'm building these decks and I might be spending hours and hours building multiple decks, that's taking away from my time to go out, introduce myself to a new business, a prospect, and introduce myself, set up a meeting with them to become a future client. And what that really means to me is that if I'm spending all my time building these decks all the time, I'm losing out on money for myself and getting new clients and having new business and making just my goals for each month and each quarter. So that's kind of what it personally means to me.
When we talk about just practical advice for listeners, how do you balance quality and speed when you're delegating that creative work like slides or branding? So to your point, you can get out there on the streets, make the money, and see people and have those face-to-face interactions that are so impactful.
Great question. So for me personally, I will spend a little bit of time and I will create multiple different decks already, and they will be templates for me to start off. And having template decks for myself, it's easy that I can just build something real fast at times, depending on what that budget might be with that prospect that I'm talking to and they're looking for a proposal, where I don't have to start from scratch, but I already know what they're looking for. I might just have to edit a few things, but it's a lot easier if I already have something pre-built for myself, whether it be, a $5,000 range, $10,000, $20,000. It's already pre-built for me, and it allows me to already have some type of template and creative already halfway done, where I'm not spending an extra hour starting from scratch for a company. And I can just pick and pull and edit it tailored to what that company and that business's needs are.
What would you say would be the hardest part about letting go of deck creation in order to enable what you just were talking about there?
I think the hardest thing for almost anyone is going to be losing control. We're set to have control over what we want it to be. And when we let loose on that, we're giving other people control of that. And we, just as humans, we like to have enough control and control our destiny, control this pitch deck, when and where it's going to be to this client. When we give someone else that control, we're a little nervous and our mindset kind of starts drifting off a little bit to a point of, are they going to have the correct information that I'm looking for? Are they going to have this back to me at a reasonable time? Should I have just taken the time to get this information myself? So it's a big choice and responsibility on us to give up that control and trust, our other AI aspects or our other tools that we're able to use, so we can be out talking to other people and they're doing that data part for us, or they're giving us that information that we're looking for. So for me personally, I would say it's really having that control and letting loose a little bit and hoping that I'm getting the right information that I've requested or needed to get.
When we look at the big picture of all the different points we're discussing, what's one shift you hope to see in how companies value and manage creative work in the next 5 years? And, we've talked about AI, we've talked about tools, we're talking about strategies, all the different things that continue to evolve, that will continue to evolve, some of them even more rapidly than what we've seen recently or even the prior years, just from years of experience. What would you say would be that one shift?
I would say that with a company as big as us, we are given a lot of tools. And I hope that we take the time to learn these tools, because a lot of these tools are given to us for a specific reason, to cut down in different categories, cut down in different times that we're supposed to be building decks. But there's a lot of people that have, been in this industry. They're comfortable with their way. But when we're given new tools, I think it's a great opportunity for us to really look into those tools, really dive into them and figure out, hey, is this something that might make my life a little bit easier?
And that's always really important as a professional, to your points. What advice would you give someone who's overwhelmed and doesn't even know where to start when it comes to delegating this type of assistance?
I would say it's going to be overwhelming for sure. And one of the biggest things is that you need to take a breath and just take steps. You need to prioritize what is going to be your highest task all the way to your medium to your lowest. And you don't want to rush anything, of course, because when you rush something, you make mistakes, you make errors, and you don't want to do that. But you want to give yourself enough time. You want to ask your coworkers, hey, I need some ideas, or what have you done in the past? I would say, use your resources 100% of the tools that we have within whatever company you're with, but as well as talk with your manager, talk with your coworkers. They've been in this situation. They've done these kind of pitches before. They've worked with this maybe specific type of industry, an automotive industry, a food industry, and they might have a creative idea that you might not have even thought of. And it's a great way of just coming up and talking about different ideas and different ways to get through this deck, as well as maybe they have something that is already built and they're willing to share with you, and you just tailor it to that specific client. Everyone is trying to work together as a team. 100% sales is very competitive, but it is really up to you to put that deck together, to get that in front of the correct person and present it to where they have an interest and they want to learn more about your products and what you have to offer and how you can benefit their business. And I believe that even though sales is very competitive, that coworkers or managers, they're there to help you no matter what, and they'll give you ideas on what to do, what not to do. And I honestly say that anyone that's, nervous about doing this kind of stuff, your coworkers are always going to be there to help you out. 100%. They're going to tell you what tools to use, what will make it easier, what not to use. Maybe you're using a comfortable tool that takes a lot longer to get something in results back. And you might not have never known about another tool that you can use that can cut that in half, that time in half of getting that data or that creativity. So I would definitely say, work with your coworkers, learn from them, go out on pitches with them, see how they talk to people. You can definitely learn from a lot of other team members.
No, that's great. And a lot of what you brought up are positive effects, like learning from the team members, having that safety net and really being on that path together while learning and growing yourself. What would you say, are there any other positive effects that might have on things like productivity and overall well-being, in addition to some of the points that you just brought up?
I would say that you want to balance everything, 100%. You need to have a social life. You need to have a work life. You need to, balance out how much you are in the office, how much you are building these decks, how much you're going out and just prospecting as well. There's a big difference between prospecting and you're calling someone up on a phone and trying to get to that decision maker. It doesn't make it as personal as you stopping in at that location, just saying, hey, I don't have a meeting, but I just want to introduce myself. And by that time, if they have the time and they're willing to give you a couple minutes or so, it makes it a lot more personal to where they have a face to a name now. And same with you. You know who that decision maker is. You introduced yourself, but just overall, that's just life in general. When you're going out with friends, if you're going out and meeting new friends as well, you're just having a conversation. You just want to introduce yourself. You get to know them. It's the same way as socializing within the business itself on, prospecting or just talking with current clients as well. You want to get to know everyone, but you want to balance everything out. I would say that's a big thing, is balancing everything out.
No, I think that's a great point, especially when it takes on average 9 to 12 touch points right now to reach a decision maker. And when you're looking at what am I going to talk about next? How am I going to make this connection to really help move the ball down the court and get this opportunity closed? Those touch points are important. So face to face. Of course, you had email, phone calls, but really make that connection and having the time when we talk about tools and platforms to allow you to do that, but also work effectively to have new things that you can target with multiple prospects, but also handling multiple accounts that you can maintain and retain and upsell in all those relationships. So that's very important. So that's great perspective there.
Yeah, and big time on even adding on to that is that a client or a prospect, they might say no right now, but that doesn't mean that is 100% no down the line, right at that second. might not be the right time, but pursuing it with new data, new information that you have, using those tools to be, hey, this is how I compare to maybe some of these other stations in the market. Maybe I didn't send that over to you right away, but I just want to show you, you might be working with another station. This is what we can do differently for you over here at our station. So using those tools, and, it's no is never an official no.
It's just right now. It's not forever. It's just okay, well, then we'll try again tomorrow. What would you say are some successes just from being able to use the tools in terms of allowing you, from a daily workflow perspective, to be able to make appointments, close deals, and really have that impact to really grow your book of business, but also help your accounts?
Yeah, I would honestly say ever since we got a tool called TopLine, it has been one of my top aspects to use. It helps out on gathering data for myself and showing prospects when I walk in the door, who is Fox 13? How do you compare to the other markets here in Utah? I think it's a great tool when I walk in and just show them some actual data, physical data on a piece of paper, and I'm able to hand that to them when going in. And it helps to pretty much start up conversations, setting up meetings. And I think a great example for me was that I was able to use TopLine and pull some data that compared us to all the other markets here in Utah to a law firm that had been spending tons of money and with basic cable to show him, hey, this is what you're getting at with them. This is what we can do for you. Here's the data to show it. And from showing him that, it turned on a huge light bulb for him, thinking, you know what, maybe I need to look into Fox 13 a little bit more. And to see that happen is great, because this is a prospect that I had been working on for almost 2 years. They said no, never gave up. But showing them more data that TopLine was able to give me, I think helped out a ton. It was amazing. For them to see that physical data as well on what we could do, it really turned the knob for me, for them to really start digging in, asking what we can do for them. And at that point, it was up to us to get some creativity, show them a little bit more data on what our station has to offer, how we can grow your brand, how we can help you get more clients. And eventually, they became one of my higher paying clients. And I really have to say it was great using that tool, plus talking with other coworkers on how they manage law firms on top of that, as well as my manager helping me out. There's a lot of different chains of events, but over that 2 years, never gave up. And eventually they became a great client, and they're very happy. And, we only look to grow this law firm from there.
And congratulations on the persistence, overcoming those multiple no's, right? Just not right now. And then, being able to close that awesome deal from being able to be consistent and break up all those points and those touch points and involve all the people to help you with that decision maker. So that's a great story, but congrats again on that. When we look at today and the topic and what we're discussing, if listeners walk away remembering one thing from this conversation, what should it be?
Don't do anything alone. Ask your coworkers, talk with your managers, learn about the tools that your company provides. They give you those tools for a reason. It's supposed to help out your job a little bit more and cut down time. And for myself, over the time, I use as many tools as possible to just find prospects, to talk to prospects, gather specific data using TopLine, using Waymark, as well as to show what kind of funny or educational commercials we can build to show that creativeness to that prospect or client. And there's a lot of great tools that our company gives us, and there's reasons for that. So I say, if you're taking away from anything, don't focus too much on one aspect, balance everything out, and make sure that, you're talking with managers, coworkers. They're going to help you get those creative ideas that you might not have even thought of. Talk with the client about some different creative ideas. They might have something that you didn't even think that you were able to create. And if your goal is to help that business and drive those clients to that business and help with their brand awareness, we are supposed to be the experts in this field, and we need to show them how and why we are the experts in this field. And like I said, coming up with ideas to pitch them, even just talking off the first time you're talking with them, what kind of ideas do you have? Maybe we can build this for them. It's a great way of really using everything that we have. So I would say use all of our tools that we're given through our company, as well as our coworkers. They've been in these situations and they're there to help you out.
Mike, this has been such a valuable conversation.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you guys for having me on. This was awesome.
I really appreciate how you tied your cross-industry experience back to one powerful principle. When sellers focus on what they do best and leave the rest, they free up time to build stronger relationships and close more deals. The way you've shown how tools, teamwork, and persistence all come together, that's a game changer for anyone navigating today's competitive sales landscape. Thanks again for sharing your story with us, Mike, and thanks to our listeners for joining The Selling Edge. Until next time, keep selling smarter, not harder.